Welcome. Thanks for tuning in.
Zanna,
Miranda,
it's time for a new podcast.
with video this time, dear audience.
I like it. Today we are going to talk about stop throwing service design at each problem.
Yes,
Let's start with why this podcast.
yes. That's not only, to get some clickbait because it's a nice title, right? There's actually
It is
a
a nice
reason
title.
why I'm saying that. And for me, what I see is that a lot of, it's become a bit of a hype, right? I don't think there's any company that's now not doing something with service design. And whenever something is a hype, it has positives, but it also has risks. So for me, what I see, of course, been working in CX for 25 years. And I would say maybe the last 5 to 10 years, service design has become more and more popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I just see companies struggle. When do I use it? How do I use it? And also my advice would be when not to use it. So I thought, hey, seeing so many companies struggle with it, let's do a podcast about it.
Great idea, I think. Okay, so we talk about service design. Maybe it's nice to explain a little bit more about service design. What is it?
Yeah, and that's a bit from my perspective, right? So I got to know service design, I think it was almost 10 years ago when I was working at a Dutch insurance company. And there was a lady, she was doing her PhD at the, I don't know how to say it in English, Delft University. So one of the very, well-known universities in the Netherlands, around service design, but specifically around context mapping. And so really, how do you understand the context of users, whether it's customers or employees? And it comes from industrial design, right? So it has transferred from industrial design to service design.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an amazing approach. So let me also first say that. And so it's really to deep dive to understand, okay, what does the context of the customer or, a civilian and whatever the problem you want to solve, to really deep dive and understand that. And also one of the companies in the Netherlands that I think are really high quality, they're called Muses, are two sisters. And I also did an interview with Zanna. She's one of the sisters who runs it. Unfortunately, that interview is in Dutch. But I thought for this podcast, let me give you some of the highlights, right? Because she's embodying this field. So I'm always checking, hey, am I being too critical or do you see the same? And she was also saying, yes, it's too hyped now, right? A lot of organizations are creating their own service design profiles, right? So they're trying to get it more in-house, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? I think CX should be something that's part of the organization. But a few things that she mentioned is that she sees internal journey maps being used. So no customers, let's say the target group is a customer, you want to fix something. Then no customers are, for example, being interviewed for the journey maps. Or personas are being created, but they are purely based on assumptions from colleagues working at the organization. And I think for me, one of the key things that I see is that service design and UX design, they are sort of blending, but I think that's making it even more complex. So for me, of course, both have in common user-centered design, right? Human-centered design, which I think is a plus for anything that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, the UX part, it tends to be way more on the digital side, right? So how can I enhance the app? How can I enhance the website, right? The digital experience. Well, service design for me is more about innovation. So we have a problem, I don't know, and nobody that's around 30 cares about their pension. That's a risk, right? How are we going to solve that problem?
Yeah.
To me, that's where service design fits in. Right? So if you really want to innovate, I think it's the perfect methodology to use. But, the but is coming, almost all companies are not necessarily innovating. They're trying to improve something. And to me, these two things are very different, right? So for me, creating a new solution to a problem is not the same as improving, for example, that journey X takes too long or that not enough people go successfully through that journey. So for me, I think it helps to split between UX design and service design and to split between, am I really innovating or am I trying to improve something?
All right. So when I'm really innovating, I can use service design. When I'm improving, I need to do something else.
Yes, and for me, of course, elements from service design like journey mapping, right, doing qualitative research. I'm not saying you should not use any of those techniques, but for me, it's not service design in its full scope. And I think that's also the bridge to, what do I see when I'm working with organizations? So for me, they are sort of stuck in the middle. So they are using service design to improve, but that means that they are doing, for example, super extensive, like 3 months qualitative research, and then they're stuck. And I think 3 months qualitative research is super valuable if you want to innovate, but if you want to improve, and again, I'm making it black and white, right? Just designing a new letter and doing an A/B test is not necessarily a full, MVP prototype service design happening. So I think now you're stuck in the middle, right? They're doing too much to improve. They're doing not enough to innovate. That's what's a bit stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
And when you look at the other things that I see is that there's, for example, no focus on changing behaviors of employees, right? It's really focusing on the journey itself. While in our case, we see that at least 50%, if not more, of the impact that we're making to create happy customers is through, tiny habits and changing behaviors of employees.
Yeah.
I see them using journey mapping tooling, but I also see them drowning in the journey mapping tooling, right? They have so many possibilities, and yes, the idea was to create an overview, but they're so deep diving into specific qualitative research that they sort of get lost in, okay, step back, how many journeys do we have? Okay, we have 30 journeys. How many customers do we have per journey? Let's first create a full overview to then understand, okay, based on data, let's say we have 30 journeys. Okay, these 3, they have the most customers, they have the most complaints, we have a super low satisfaction score. And it doesn't always have to be numbers, right? It could also be like a super painful journey that you want to fix anyway. But then you can start explaining to the rest of the organization why they need to focus on that journey. Because I think 90% of CX service design projects, they are good at, doing research, getting insights, but then they get stuck to mobilize the rest of the organization to actually do something with the insights.
Yeah. So you say really focus, right? Really make it small and start improving, doing something with the information.
Yeah, and I think indeed maybe also the step before is to first check maybe in the matrix where I said, is it right, UX or service design, is it improving or innovation? I think just doing that super simple exercise will already help you to prevent you doing 3 months of qualitative research. Well, again, black and white, you could do an A/B test in a day, right?
Yeah.
So I think, again, thinking about why am I doing this, and then choose the best tool, technique to actually work with that. So one of the other things that I see companies struggling with in the same, let's say, service design field is that there's a lot of analysis. And I think that's a good thing because that will help you figure out what's the problem. But then they jump too fast to, okay, we've done the analysis. We figured out that, let's say, customers are really stressed out. And then they jump to finding solutions. And for example, analysis is being done on, hey, let's say in the last year, so many customers have gone through X and this was their stress level. And then they jump into solutions, but the missing link is to have the data on customer, on employee, and organization level. So you have a baseline score to then start monitoring, hey, the solutions that we're thinking of, are they actually improving satisfaction?
Yeah.
Are they actually improving stress levels? Are they reducing, the speed of the process? I'm just making it up, right? So there's also a big difference between doing an analysis and having what I say, like a photo of the analysis, right? It was one set of data for a year, for 3 years, versus, okay, we need to start monitoring the effect of the improvements that we're making.
Yeah, to make sure if it's working right, but also to keep the energy in the organization working on the improvements.
Yeah, and also maybe just even to make sure you have recent data, right? If you've done, so several organizations feel, oh, we've done so many research, another study. But if you've done the analysis, let's say maybe 2 years ago, then I think your conclusions are still valid, right? That stress in this example is a problem. But you need to start measuring a new baseline to understand, okay, 2 years later, right now, what is the actual stress level? And then we can start improving and see, if it's going up.
Yeah.
Then 2 years ago is not the best baseline to use if you want to start more, let's say on a quarterly basis, see the effect of the things you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about this quarterly basis, you don't need a lot of responses to see the effect, right? You don't need hundreds of responses.
No, we always say, let's say from a statistical basis, so you have two things when you check the numbers. So a lot of listeners or viewers by now have already heard about our driver analysis. So if you want to run a driver analysis to find out, what has the biggest impact? Personal attention is 3 times more impactful than speed. Then you need 100 or more responses. Because then you want to figure out, okay, what's, let's say, our top 10, our top 5 statements that have the biggest impact. That's your baseline. But then if you want to start measuring, are we improving or decreasing on those top 10 statements? Statistically, they're saying 20 responses is the bare minimum. I like to say let's have at least 30. Mm-hmm. And why is that? So it's not a coincidence, right? That you have some, statistical indication that, okay, it could still be coincidence, but with 30, a little bit sure that it's not a coincidence and it's actually connected to the improvements you've been doing.
All right.
And then one final thing that I see in, let's say, the structure of service design, let's say semi-implemented, is also the talk about prototyping, the talk about creating a minimum viable product, and talking about making a business case. Because yes, if you want to create a prototype of a new online tool, then of course you need to figure out, because probably somebody needs to build it, so you need to figure out, okay, what are the costs and maybe make a business case. But also here, I see that's again that they're stuck, right? For all the improvements that we've done in the last 15 to 20 years, we've never created a prototype. We're never created a minimum viable product. Now, I'm not saying that that's the right way to go, right? I'm just saying we're not the innovation gang, right? We are the improvement and transformation gang. Mm-hmm. But also here, I think you need to be aware, when does it make sense to go for the prototype and business case approach as part of service design? For me, that's innovation. And when does it make sense to say, we're going to improve, we're going to ask with tiny habits for employees to, change behavior, test one. You don't need a business case for that, right? You just need to start trying, experimenting, just do, and stop getting stuck into, let's do this additional analysis. But maybe that group feels a bit differently. I always say when people, because people recognize that, we need another analysis. I always say that's the most subtle form of resistance. It's really easy to keep saying, but maybe, the senior folks, they feel different. Yeah, but Gen Z, they really feel something different. Could be, but let's first start, based on what we have. Let's start improving. And if it's not having any effect, maybe, then it's time. And again, right, I'm saying if you're improving. If you're innovating, of course, the needs of Gen Z, when they think about pension, is completely different than, I'm 60 years old and pension is,
Yeah, for sure.
pretty close.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. Or not, right? I always say, my husband and I also, right? If you really love what you do, that it's a really arbitrary moment to say, I'm 65, I'll just stop working.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's for another podcast, maybe.
Yeah, I will note that down.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that's it, right? What do you see when working with organizations?
Yes, I think those are the main, let's say, challenges I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So short summary. What should I do? See all the journeys that I have within the organization. See what are the most important journeys based on the data that I have. And then see what do I want to do, right? Do I want to improve or do I really want to innovate? When I want to innovate, I go down the rabbit hole of service design. We just talked about it a little bit.
And find experts who can help you, right? It's
Yeah,
really
exactly.
an expertise, right? Don't hobby too much yourself.
That's a good one. When I don't want to innovate, but when I do want to improve, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so I think also, as I mentioned, right, I think that's more where our expertise lies, right? So on the innovation side, I think companies like Musis, like true service designers, they really know what they're doing. And I think what's also relevant to know, if you've listened to more podcasts, you know that one of my key stories, why do we use these stupid statistics to find the drivers, is because you run the risk when you ask customers or employees what matters to them, you get a rational answer. Right? It's about salary. It's never about salary. It's about speed of doing things. It's almost never about speed. So we want to understand what are the latent subconscious needs. We use statistical techniques for that.
Mm-hmm.
But really good service design companies who know what they're doing, they can also get to the subconscious latent need level with really good qualitative research. Right? But then you really need to know what you're doing. Right? A really deep dive to understand, to get to the essence of the problem. Just wanted to mention that. So when you look at improving and look at also our approach. So for us, we do internal journey mapping, right? So when we map the journey, let's say becoming a customer at an insurance company, for us there's a conscious reason why we map that journey in just 2.5 hours without doing 3 months of context mapping, because that's not relevant seeing our goal. Right? Our goal is to get a cross-functional team, because the goal in that workshop is not just to understand what the journey looks like, but also for the employees to start feeling, this is where the value is of working with journeys. Mm-hmm. Right? We're actually working together across silos, and we want to get an idea of, okay, what are the steps, the transactional side, that the customer go through, and based on the branding, what are the emotions that you think, right, you employee, that you think that matters to your customers. So in that part, no customers. Why? Because if we ask customers, they will give us rational answers. So based on that, we create then the survey, but we send that survey to customers who have actually recently experienced that journey. Right? So that's where we do get customer data.
Yeah.
And then, as I just mentioned, as soon as we have 100 or more back, right, we can run the statistical analysis, and then we know, hey, personal attention will bring us 5 times faster, more revenue, more satisfaction than, let's say, the ease of using the app, for example. Right, so we translate the insights into 2 parts. One is, okay, how can we enhance the ladder of the journey? How can you enhance, step X of the journey? But often, since the human factor tends to be the number one, the behaviors of the employees is like this huge pot of potential that is often not being tapped into. Right, so that's where we translate those drivers, those insights into tiny habits. Feel free to listen to our Tiny Habits podcast that we already recorded. And then again, I think the common denominator of everything is how can you make this broad, complex concept of human centricity, of customer centricity, really tangible, mm-hmm. and really integrated into the daily work. And that's where Tiny Habits really is a super fun, energizing way to do that. And then 2 final things, right? You want to make sure, again, that it's not, as I mentioned, a photo analysis of, let's say, the last 2 years, this was the problem. So now you want to have a baseline of the journey, and you want to measure at least once a quarter, hey, are we seeing the effect of our improvements? And last but not least, we are also fans of then saying, hey, we're going to create a journey team, because that's a team that is going to continuously check the results. Hey, are these improvements making sense? Learn from it. If it goes well, do more. If it's not going well, reassess. And then, you have a continuous improvement of your journey and not just a separate one-off project. So those would be our advice when we say, hey, I'm not necessarily looking to innovate. I want to improve, but I want to improve in such a way that I'm mobilizing the whole organization and not the organizations looking at us and saying, those CX guys and girls, I don't know what they're doing the whole day.
Sending some research, doing some analysis.
Yeah, And I can just say nice insights and just continue with my daily work.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Sounds really good and clear.
At least we think so, right?
Yeah. I hope the listeners, the viewers will as well.
Yes.
All right. Anything else on this topic?
No, I think indeed, just to summarize, as you mentioned, right? I think the key is to go back. Why, right? What do we want to achieve? Mm-hmm. And then start picking your tools, your methodologies, your way of working, and not the other way around, right? We have service design, and we're throwing service design at every problem.
Yeah.
Might not be the most effective way of doing it.
And when you work with service design, work with the experts.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Yes, it's super relevant to make sure that you have journey mapping as a competency in-house, that you understand maybe how to, do research qualitative and quantitatively. But if you really want to innovate, I'm not sure if that's something that you should have in-house, but definitely work with experts, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I like the video podcast.
I hope viewers/listeners will do as well.
Me too. Thank you very much and see you next time.
All right, see you next time. Ciao.
Ciao.